All right, hey there, folks. This is the last of our videos, and once again, I am coming to you from a weird location. And hopefully, this is the last weird location I'll be in for a while. Last procedural bit of business that we have for our class is to let you know that tonight I will be putting out the instructions for your final paper. I'll also be in direct communication with you guys about that. I'll send out emails to remind you about it. And of course, I'll be available to talk much better this evening. I'm actually just about to leave this very, very weird room that I'm in. I'm actually staying in a dormitory right now. But I'll be out of here this evening, actually, hopefully in about 50 minutes. And then I will have perpetual computer access once again. So, and not a moment too soon, since your final papers are coming up. I'd love to be able to help you guys out as much as I possibly can. So please do not be even slightly shy about leaning on me in terms of getting those things done. I'd like to help you however I can. So this final video is technically going to be about new media and internet usage. Now, here's the thing. It's not a big topic. There's a lot of research that happens, a lot of ink gets spilled on the topic, but the fact of the matter is, there's really not all that much there. Uh, at least not the sort of thing that might interest a broad audience or be broadly applicable. Most new media research takes old theories, repackages them, and says, here's what it does in this context, here's what it does in this context. So everything that you've already learned from the rest of the semester so far probably applies just as much to any form of new media. New media itself is kind of an ambiguous term because what does it even refer to? It can be a really nebulous type of thing, and so there are some sort of terminology of definitional type of things that we can look at and we can employ for using this. But mostly what we're going to be looking at today uh, is some of the forerunners of these of research in new media who actually contributed something of meaning. So weirdly, for this class, when we look at new media, we're going to be looking back and seeing basically how is it that you ought to go about studying new media if you're going to be studying new media. So let's start off with Marshall McLuhan. Marshall McLuhan was the one who coined a term you're probably familiar with. He used the term global village, right? The idea of a global village was that you'd have all these special communication technologies, and that because they exist, they expanded our reach, right? Once upon a time, you had the members of your cave, right? And those were the people who were there to feed you information. Every single communication update since then has had the effect of broadening our circles. Newspapers gave us access to a bigger area. Radio gave us access to an even bigger area. TV gave us access to an even bigger area. And our village, our little tiny community, our cave, grew and grew and grew, which had the effect of shortening distances between people all over the world, right? I can go and visit friends who I've never met in Russia, but with whom I have a very personal relationship. I traveled out to Turkey not too long ago and met in person a person who I had known for a long time, but only had ever known him online, right? He was part of my village, but it was an online village. New media allows for that sort of thing to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and now with the internet, the village is freaking huge. It's globe spanning. There are very few places that are truly dark on our map where we really don't where those are people who are not part of our circle in some way. Harold Innis made a little bit of an addition here. His addition, I would actually say, fed into one of the more interesting recent contributions that would have come from Annie Lang. What he said is that time-biased media favors the preservation of knowledge over long periods of time, whereas space-based media favors the dissemination of knowledge over great distances, right? So what he would say is that anytime you're evaluating a piece of new media and attempting to discern its value, you're going to be looking at those two factors. Cave art has an incredible time-based value, right? We still have cave art from caveman days, so it preserved the knowledge that they wanted to preserve for a very, very, very long time, right? Space-biased media, though, is going to spread it out far. That cave art is just in that cave. Unless you go to that cave, you don't see that cave art. The only way that that cave art gets out of that cave is if you use a space-biased media like digital photography, and you take a picture of it and you post that picture on Facebook, and now a lot of people are going to see that cave art. That cave art was time-biased, it lasted a long time. Facebook is space-biased, a lot of people can see it. So that was his big contribution. The Annie Lang contribution, she's a very, very interesting researcher and very controversial. But I think a lot of her ideas have a lot of merit. She would say everything is media. Even if somehow you and I were to meet face to face and we were talking directly, she would still say we were talking over media, but it would be natural media, right? Light. I could see you because there's light. If there was no light, I wouldn't see you. I can see you, therefore light is a medium. She would say air is a medium because it communicates sound. If I can't hear you, we're not communicating. But that's a natural medium. So the two natural mediums are light and sound. She would say that every human medium, every invented medium is made with the intention of warping space-time, of altering space-time in some fashion. I write something so that it lasts longer than if I were just to say it. I'm using a video right now so that you can hear me and see me even though I'm not there. This man-made form of media is a warping of space-time. So she would take his idea and just sort of expand it a little bit to give a bit of a broader understanding of what's going on. Anyway, back to Marshall McLuhan. So he would suggest that when a new medium is introduced into a society, it changes the people who encounter it. We adapt to include it into our universe. It becomes part of our cognitive functioning to some extent. And you gotta like that about the guy. He was an optimist, and so rarely are media researchers optimists and excited about what media can do and the good that it can have for society. He really thought that this global village thing was going to be big, but of course he was doing his research during a time when he was looking at TV, and TV is fine, it's good. And it was a leap ahead, of course, technologically. But the fact of the matter is, it's a one-way communication, right? Powerful sources are communicating to not powerful sources. The internet, though, that can change things, right? The internet is capable of facilitating two-way communication. I have interpersonal relationships with people digitally. That's genuinely a global village, that I can meet people in faraway countries and have a relationship with them one-on-one. So maybe McLuhan was a little bit of ahead of his time, but I think he had the right idea. This global village thing is something that's kind of come to pass, and that was very much his idea. I want to skip ahead a little bit, and let's go straight to Lev Manovich, right? Because he did probably more in terms of definition for new media than anybody else. He said that new media are numerically represented. In other words, they are digital. They are not analog. He would say they were modular. In other words, they were many pieces making up a whole. The internet is not a thing, right? And I remember here. I've picked on Trump so much over this semester. I got to even things out. I remember hearing Clinton a long while ago talking about how important it would be to get the anarchist's cookbook off of the internet, as though it was just something that could be removed. Any millennial is going to hear her say that and think that it's just patently ridiculous. You can't, once something's on the internet, it's not like you can just remove it, right? Because the internet is not a thing. It's a conglomeration of millions of things, each of them individual in the hands of private individuals. My computer right now is a portion of the internet, a teeny, teeny, tiny little portion of the contribution of the internet, right? And so, how are you supposed to contain something like that short of completely removing it from everybody? So, that's what's meant by modular. It's automatic. We don't. It does things on its own, right? We don't need. I didn't have to, somehow manually connect my computer to yours in order to be communicating with you right now. It's variable and it's transcodable, and those are both getting at sort of the same idea. Variable meaning, that, well, we can talk about that in a little bit. Let's talk about it now. So the idea would be that they have several different versions of the same basic thing, right? There's a computer, and it has, and one of them's a Mac and one of them's a PC, right? Same sort of thing, different versions. But they're also transcodable. Transcodability is just this idea that despite the fact that you've got different things and you've got different formats, you can take things and change their formats, right? I can take my old VHS tapes and I can transform them so that they're now digital and I can watch them on my computer, right? I can take my Word documents. I'm a PC guy. I can take my Word documents and I can save them as PDFs, right? They're transcodable. They can be changed. So that was his big contribution. Now I would like to mention that there's probably at least one missing variable on Manovich's list, and that's interactivity, right? That has to do with how a user can interact with its media, right? That's where TV would not really be a new media. Because beyond the function of the remote control, I don't actually interact or influence the content that is in that media environment. That idea came from a guy named Peter Vorderer, who is super, super epic. I've met him a couple of times, but I don't think he remembers me. Anyway, so those would be the major elements, I guess you could say, the major definitional points behind new media. I would like to just bring up one final thought on things, and this goes to utility in terms of new media. You remember a while ago we talked about diffusion of innovations, which I think is probably the most practical of all COM theories, because it allows you to do far more than just make effective communication. It allows you to do far more than just predict what's going to be successful. It allows you to do things like make smart investment decisions. I would like to add one more little bit to diffusion of innovations in your mind, and that bit is called Moore's Law. Moore's Law is that something always happens when it comes to new media improvement. He said that you will have exponential decreases in the size of something and decreases in the amount that it costs, along with exponential increases in computational speed, right? So think about the old computers. Old computers used to take up an entire room at a university, and they cost millions of dollars, and everybody was ludicrously grateful to have one. MSU had in its comm department one of the very, very early computers, and people used to wait in line in order to do it. People used to schedule time on the computer months in advance, just the same way they might use the Acceleratron over in the physics department right now, right? You had to schedule and pay if you wanted to use the computer, and everybody wanted and needed it, right? And once you had it, you couldn't go back. Moore's Law absolutely applied to the computer. They got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. That first computer that we had here, I think I seem to remember, had like 25 kilobytes of memory or something like that. And I mean, just pathetic, right? No storage space whatsoever. And its storage space was on cards, right? So, but as time has gone on, I have a thumb drive in my pocket with 16 gigabytes of space on it, and I think I paid $4.50 for it, and I paid that in Japan, where every single price is completely inflated anyway, right? So things have gotten so much smaller, and they've gotten so much cheaper, and they've gotten so much faster. Moore's law definitely ended up applying to computers, and in general, it's just plain old going to apply to everything. Cell phones, right? My cell phone is much smaller than the one I used to have, which was a gigantic brick. In fact, the first cell phone that came out was called the Brick. It was big and it was heavy, and you held the whole thing up to your head like you were holding a giant brick to your head, right? As time has gone on, they've gotten smaller and smaller until there are cell phones that just sit in your ear. The only reason I even have one that's this big is because it has a screen on it, so it's also a computer. And so Moore's law definitely applies there too. Moore's law maybe could have stood to include something along the lines of as technology develops, you'll end up with crossover technology, right? This is a calculator, this is a computer, this is a telephone, does all of those same functions, and it's in one neat little teeny tiny package that fits right in my pocket and is highly usable. So that's Moore's law. And the reason it applies to DOI, if you're thinking about DOI, for example, from an investment perspective, and you're saying, okay, well, I want to be able to determine whether this product is worthy of me investing in it, or I want to be able to determine whether or not this product that I've come up with will be successful, you can apply DOI to evaluate it. Moore's law will also be something you can apply. Is this smaller and faster and cheaper than the thing that I'm hoping to replace? Is this an upgrade in those areas? How big of an upgrade is it in those areas? And that lets you make some predictions about the potential of that device, because things invariably move in that direction. All right, that's the end of this final video lecture. I'll be getting you the email with the details for your final papers this weekend, or not this weekend. You'll write it over this weekend. I'll get it to you tonight. It's Wednesday evening right now, so you'll see an email from me this evening. And I wish you all of the best of luck. I hope that you will be in touch with me if you have any questions, and even if you would just like some help. I'll be happy to contribute however I can. All right, best of luck, everybody.